Hi, and welcome to yet another season of the CodePub podcast. As with last season, we're continuing with the same format still. We'll be following the usual interview format, we'll have some interesting guests, we'll delve into their stories, make some interesting conclusions out of them, but this season also comes with something different. I have a co-host, and you probably remember this guy from last season because he was my first guest, so welcome Bora.
Hello, thank you for the welcome, glad to be here.
Yeah, so we had this wild idea, like we're keeping the format, like the original format with the interviews and all of that, but we're introducing something new. As with most things we tend to do, whether it's, presentations or whatever, all of our good ideas happen with beer. And as you can see, we have some beer around with us. So we have this new format we'll be covering in parallel with the interview format we had so far. We decided to call the MetaDev Corner. So, Boro, what is the MetaDev Corner?
That's a great question, and I was going to ask you the same question, but since you already asked me, I guess I see two ways to define MetaDev. So one way is if you use the traditional definition of meta, which is to apply the same word twice. So dev, developing developers. And then the other definition is the word meta is a synonym for beyond.
Yeah.
So MetaDev would mean simply beyond that, beyond development. I would like to think that MetaDev sits right between both of those definitions. And to my understanding, really, the idea is to talk about development in general, but also about things beyond development. So things that go behind the scenes, such as building communities, building tooling, working on hiring, and, the interesting famous roles like DevX and DevRel, which I hope you and I will get the chance to define in one of these sessions.
We don't have a chance in hell of defining them, but that doesn't stop us from trying. So
yes, they have very interesting variety of definitions for sure. I think first I'm really excited to be here and really happy to be your co-host. As some of you may already know, Darko and I already did some presentations together in a pair. So working with him is a breeze.
Yay me.
The reason why it's a breeze, I would like to say that probably both of us have the same biases and have the same interests. We also actually pretty closely follow the same career paths, more or less. So the reason why I'm excited about MetaDev is, whenever we go out on a beer or whatever, talk again about work after a long day work, we talk about, things like the philosophy of programming, the philosophy of development, the philosophy of engineers. So I really hope to capture some of those glimpses in our hangouts in some of these sessions. Really happy to be here.
Yeah, cool. Well, I'm happy to have a co-host at last. It will probably be a bit less weird and awkward and so forth, but we'll see. But yeah, regardless of the fact that we've had similar career paths, I don't let this guy fool you. He's like significantly more reasonable than I am. I am significantly more reckless. But beyond that, yes, he's pretty like spot on with interest and all of that. So, okay, what topics do we aim to cover with MetaDev? What do we want to discuss? Like, can we give a glimpse or, a spoiler or whatever?
Yes, great question. I would actually like to talk to you about that, basically. I know, so just a quick spoiler, Darko and I already had some discussion prior to recording this, and the main conclusion was, okay, let's figure most of the stuff in the runtime, which I find very interesting and exciting. But I guess to me, what's the most interesting bits are basically just, things like what does it mean for one engineer to grow in a given engineering culture? Mm-hmm. I guess this is one of the interesting problems or discussions that I would like to have. Or another one, what does it mean to really mentor an engineer?
Oh, right. That's an
And-
interesting one.
And things like, what's the mentee-mentor relationship? Who is the mentee? Who is the mentor? I don't think you can actually define that, but it would be great to capture some bits of that. Other bits like, what does it mean to be a good engineer?
Yeah.
What are some of the core qualities of, obviously given the engineering culture that the person works, given the company's culture, whether they value more communication or less communication, more autonomy, things like that.
And you can actually make like decent arguments for both. So
Yes, exactly. And those things around engineering, but also I would like to dive into some topics such as, what is an abstraction? I think this is a really good question, right?
yeah, that's gonna get pretty philosophical.
Yes, it is. And I mean, the questions that come after that, like, okay, we define what an abstraction is for some definition. What is a good abstraction? What is a bad abstraction? How do we define that? And in a given context of an engineering culture, what does it mean to abstract one thing? What does documenting this thing mean? And in general, all this current discussion that you and I have right now, it's mostly about asking questions. So I would say, in general, just asking a lot of questions, that some of which don't have an easy answer.
Yeah, some of which wouldn't have an answer at all, at least not a deterministic one. Maybe like the majority of them even. So who knows?
But the reason why I'm excited about this is just when you and I and other friends go have a beer, we just have like these tons of questions, and we just like continuously discuss them, try to find an answer, and obviously there is no objective answer to all of them.
Yeah.
It's all about, and actually I saw this the other day, a phrase I would really like to emphasize here is, context is queen and content is king. And I think most of the discussions here would be revolving around this core principle. Okay, we discuss about some particular idea, like what is a good abstraction, for example, or what is a good API design. And this discussion that you and I will have will probably be applicable in some scenarios, but
Absolutely,
not in others.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the best I can hope for that, at the end of every episode, we can probably offer some value to the listeners. They can either learn something or, find out something more about a certain topic that we'll be discussing, that maybe delves into certain intersections that have to do with programming, certain metas that are above programming or whatever. Or maybe even learn how not to do things, because we've done like a crap load of mistakes in our careers, like who hasn't, and maybe they can also learn from our mistakes as well. So
yeah, and also the other, besides that, one would ask, why should I be listening to these guys, right? They just like philosophize.
That's a very good question.
But my take on that question is, we do philosophize a lot. It's not a matter of discussion, but the importance of this is, in my view, when you're on your day job doing your daily things,
yeah,
and you already had these discussions with your coworkers, with your friends, whatever, it's very easy to pattern match on them, right? So are specifically in some given context, you are faced with some problem that you need to solve. And if you already had the discussion with your friends or coworkers about this particular idea, you can basically pattern match. This is how our brains work, basically, is, okay, I already had this discussion with Darko. So right now, I know that I can use this particular idea that him and I discussed to solve this problem. So I would. This is my take on that. I would not consider this philosophizing a waste of time. Obviously, we are not wasting time. We are drinking beer.
Of course, that's always like time well spent. Why are we even discussing that?
Yeah, but to me, that's the most important thing. And the most interesting bit here is, I should mention, very often with Darko, we have like these discussions where we just talk about random stuff. I don't know, BNF parser. I think that was the most recent example.
Don't write BNF parsers. Don't do that. BNF is not a format to be parsed. Go on.
And we had like this discussion. We dissected it, and a few weeks after, I just I was faced with a problem where I needed to parse something on the day job, and immediately pattern matched the discussion that him and I had.
Yeah.
And I hope that at least it's me who finds these things useful, but I hope that we can share some of these some of these conversations that you and I have with the public, and hopefully they find something interesting as well.
Yeah, that's a very good take. So ultimately, like, dive into metas, maybe provide something useful to the listeners, hopefully be entertaining. We'll do our best. I mean, we're programmers, man. We're not stand-up comedians, but we'll do our best for sure. So yeah, beyond that, some of the topics I would like to cover myself are, for example, what makes a good R&D, or what actually makes an R&D team or an R&D effort.
That's a very good discussion.
That tends to be, sort of a rarity around, and I'll leave it at that. That's an interesting one. What would be your favorite? Like, just pick one off the top of your head.
A topic or a particular thing in R&D? Because I have answers to both.
Well, no, keep them for when we're gonna do that episode. So
okay, yeah. So beyond the things I mentioned, obviously hiring, mentorship, I would also like to chat a bit about processes.
Yes.
This is a very interesting topic. A lot of the engineers that both Darko and I know, and in general, I would say you have basically two camps of engineers.
Yeah.
So one of them are like, processes are a huge waste of time.
Yeah.
Let me do my job. Let me code. That's it.
There's merit to that in some cases.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Both camps are right and wrong in their own ways.
Yeah.
And then the other camp is go full on processes, right? Processes are the most important bit. Everyone should incorporate and create processes and follow them no matter what. Okay. So I'm not now talking about the extremes, right?
Yeah.
But in general, when talking about extremes, my philosophical view on that is, for any pair of two extremes, there is a sweet spot. This is my philosophical view. I'm not saying this is true or not, and I'm hoping to dissect this with you in the upcoming
for sure.
sessions. But speaking concretely about processes, I also think there is a sweet spot where processes can really help you.
Absolutely, yeah.
And by help, I really mean, now right now I'm getting a bit into the psychological. I will not go too deep on that. Believe me, I'll just keep it brief. But speaking of processes specifically, we humans tend to do a lot of pattern matching, and most of the stuff that we do, like me moving my hand right now, happens subconsciously, and processes allow you to do this, right? So they allow you to define some steps that you can follow almost blindly, in a mechanical way, so that you can achieve some kind of thing.
Right.
But obviously, every now and then we should ask ourselves, why are we doing this? Is this process still useful? So I think there is a lot of things to be uncovered in, discussing processes, and I will stop here. I will cut here on processes.
Would you just, as a tangent, would you maybe connect all of that to Richard Feynman's, eliminate decisions so that you can, remove the mental effort and focus on the work that matters?
Exactly.
Some of the value in processes for me personally is exactly that, automate as much as possible, but, not beyond reason, do not try to automate everything. It doesn't really make sense.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But, we should also keep in mind Kant's view of, so Kant is another philosopher, his view of space-time, right? Because in one particular point of space-time, this process might be useful, but then as we move 2 weeks or 2 years from now, this process, if you get so habituated to it, if you get so used to it, it's very easy to forget asking the question, why are we doing this, right?
Yeah, absolutely. At some point it becomes like canonical truth, almost religion, and so this is the way we're doing this. We're not questioning it. So
Exactly. And it's important to have processes, but it's also important to be aware of them and remove them when the time comes, or adjust them. It doesn't have to be fully removed. So yeah, there is definitely a lot we can uncover in processes. This is just like a sneak peek. But I would say beyond processes, one thing I'm also interested in are abstractions. Like I mentioned earlier, there is a lot to uncover there as well. And when we talk about abstractions, it's really it's like this vague word, right? Because abstractions can mean a lot of things. So in the computing sense, in the sense of programming, the core concept of abstraction is function. And we can talk about functions, we can talk about abstractions, classes, but we can also talk about abstractions on a higher level. Like, what does it mean to abstract a set of people? Like, let's say Darko, Boro, and a few other people in this company of 3,000 folks. Darko, Boro, and these people are in one team. So this is an abstraction, right? This team that was constructed by Darko, Boro, and other folks, 5, 6, 7 people, is an abstraction on its own. And there are some interesting questions that we can dissect. Like, what's the purpose of this abstraction? Why does this team even exist in the company? And I think there is a lot to uncover in abstractions as well. This is my actually one of the most things I'm excited about to chat. And things like programming languages, of course. We have a lot of programming languages that we can chat about. So, for instance, JavaScript is one of the most famous one, but
he's writing a programming language of his own. He's probably going to shill it now. So go ahead, please.
But I would like to have this discussion with you as well. We had it so many times. What is HTML? Is it a programming language? Is it?
Crap. There's like, are we gonna go into the Turing completeness of it or not?
We could. We could with CSS.
Yeah, and there's
degree.
Some of the Turing completenesses of CSS, like there are multiple of them. Like there are multiple ways to prove Turing completeness with CSS. One of them is kind of stretching it. Basically, it's like creating this like switchboard of lights that basically emulates a computer that a person proved that,
Yes.
Turing complete. So in that sense it is, but like, is it really? I don't know.
Yeah, and you're totally right. The other question we can ask on top of that is, what's the practicality of it? So speaking of programming languages, for instance, we can also chat a bit about type systems, which is another interesting topic. And obviously TypeScript's type system is Turing complete, but what's the practicality of it?
Yeah.
So yeah, there are I guess those are the main topics I would like to chat about. There is also things like cross communication in engineering culture. What does it mean to communicate well? How do you communicate with the people on your team?
Yeah.
How do you communicate with people on other teams? And how do you communicate with people like HR? So those are
so non-technical. Yeah, that's a very interesting topic.
And beyond that, things like how do you help developers, like tooling, documentation. So I would just I hope this is enough of a sneak peek here. I would conclude that a lot of questions are going to be asked. A lot of stuff is going to be philosophized about, and hopefully viewers will have a good time, fun time, just like you and I have when we have these discussions.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. So instead of a closer, because like we decided we're gonna wing the closer, what are you currently reading?
Oh, that's a very good question. So I should mention, I already did cover some of these bits on the CodePub episode last year, where I started reading a lot more philosophy. And most recently, I am, going deeper into psychology, just like reading things like one of the most interesting thing I would not say I read it, but I completed it, was a Coursera course, Introduction to Psychology.
Sounds cool.
Where okay, what is psychology? What are we hoping to get by it? Why is it worth studying? And there are certain philosophical aspects to it as well, such as it's just another. I would say psychology is just another tool in our tool set. In that, so it completely relies, for example, on materialism. It assumes that the brain can be represented with this neurons model.
Yeah, huge state machine.
Yeah, but this is the hard problem of consciousness. We don't know for sure whether that's really the case. For example, the neuron model works pretty well for some things, but not so well for other things, such as feelings. We cannot really describe how feelings come to be as a result of this model that we have. So reading mostly psychology, it does provide a lot of interesting ideas, hypotheses that you can use on your day job, discussing with people, how you yourself work or function in a given specific environment. And while there is no silver bullet in psychology as well, I still think it's worth pursuing. And I'm actually hoping to also cover some aspects of that in some of the MetaDev sessions. And now, actually, I am going to ask you the same question.
Yeah, well, cool. Yeah, fair enough. Well, I sort of got on this interesting obsession that I wanted to find out a lot about micro startups and how people started, getting into small businesses and built like empires out of it in some cases. And the most recent one I've been reading is called the $100 Startup. It's this interesting, like, sort of a semi-practical, semi-storytelling book that delves into how by utilizing what you're good at, and what you're good at may not really be obvious to most people, you can really make a decent living out of. Maybe not an empire, maybe not build the next McDonald's or whatever, but like get by in life with a decent amount of money without too much stress, and doing something that you don't vehemently hate. So, because like interestingly in development there is a contrast in which like developers, even though they start out loving their professions, some of us grow to be flaming cynics, and present company included. So, it might be better to, just start with something that you consider a hobby and build a business out of it without making it a huge deal. So, maybe just an exploration. So,
actually, this is a good discussion, because I'm interested in your take about what is it that makes developers skeptics or cynics. We can cover it very high level and leave this for a future session, but just like maybe on a very brief.
People.
What kind of people? Is it like other engineers or non-engineers? Is it like a question?
I would say both. Like, okay, we can. There's like no way to just touch this on a surface level. I would say like there's.
I agree.
People is like the most generic answer, because like the processes get defined by people, and like as a result the bullshit also gets created by people, and the crazy demands or the ineptitude in certain cases, like lack of skill, lack of management, and so forth. We can really dive deep into that one, but
this is enough. This is good an answer for me for the pilot session. Thank you.
So yes, I think that's pretty much it for now. We can close this one. This is sort of like an intro episode. This is supposed to give you a sneak peek, and if you found this interesting, smash the follow button, I suppose, or whatever the kids say these days. My name was Darko, this is Boro, and we've been happy to record this episode for you. See you next time.
Thank you for having me. See ya. Bye.